Welcome back, Endgame community. Thanks for joining us again. Those of you who are new to our channel, welcome. We're going to help you win at fantasy football in 2021. And this time, we're going to talk about our favorite booms, busts, and breakout players. Let's start with the boom picks. Chris, who you got first?
Yeah, well, if you've listened to me at all this offseason, you've heard me talk about this guy a ton. And he is starting to creep up draft boards, but I still don't think it's enough. I really think he has top 5 PPR running back potential, and that's Austin Ekeler of the Chargers. You know, in 2019, when Melvin Gordon held out those first 4 games and then came back, Austin Ekeler had 309 fantasy points that year and was the RB4. Last year, in the games he was healthy with Justin Herbert, he averaged over 19 fantasy points per game, and he was the RB7. If you take those games, when he was healthy with Herbert, he was the overall RB7. And all the Chargers did this offseason was vastly improve that offensive line without doing anything to the running back room, right? They didn't add a running back. In fact, if anything, they lost Kalen Ballage. So Austin Ekeler, I feel like, has an 80 catch floor. Literally, I feel like he has an 80 catch floor if he plays all, I guess it's 17 games now. If he plays all 17 games or 18 games, however many games they're playing now, I don't remember. But if he plays every game, he has an 80 catch floor. And look, if he starts to get any goal line work at all, or even scores 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, his ceiling is absolutely massive. Like I said, I do honestly think he's going to finish as a top 5 PPR running back, assuming he stays healthy. Everything is there for him. I can't find any reason to knock him at all. He's a guy you can get late in the first round, sometimes early second, and you should be taking him there every chance you can.
Yeah, we do these mocks every single week, 3 times a week. And Ekeler isn't always a first-round pick, but, he absolutely should be. Like you said, sometimes people get so enamored with ceiling and think, oh, this guy could score 15 touchdowns. He could lead the league in rushing. I'm pretty sure Austin Ekeler will not lead the league in rushing, and it doesn't matter because he could for sure be a top 10 fantasy running back because of the pass catching, and that's so important these days. And so even though he's not always viewed as a first-round pick, he definitely should be. I'm going to go with a guy who's typically not a first-round pick either. Sometimes we see in our drafts he falls to even the 3rd round, but I'm definitely securing him in the 2nd. That's Antonio Gibson, if I'm passing on a running back in round 1, that is, because, I'm not doing the whole RB thing. But anyways, as far as Gibson, we know he did last year, scored 11 touchdowns, averaged 4.7 yards per carry, a really strong rookie campaign. Just the totals weren't there as far as, high rushing numbers because game script sometimes worked against him. So this year, I think will be different. They should have at least some stability at quarterback with Ryan Fitzpatrick there. And the thing is, you should be excited about the fact that they talk about Gibson being more involved as a receiver. J.D. McKissic cut into his fantasy value a lot. McKissic was a lot of times, very helpful in best ball. I won't say league winner, but he was definitely helpful in a lot of best ball drafts. Was a nice waiver wire pickup too for redraft leagues. He caught so many passes. Some of those might go Gibson's way this season. I think they really want to get him more used to that role. If he can improve his pass blocking, he'll definitely be on the field more. So Gibson has nowhere to go but up. I expect a 1,000-yard season. There's no reason he can't score double-digit touchdowns again and even more receptions. You know what? This sounds like a guy who definitely should be locked in as a 2nd-round pick. Maybe even late first. I don't think you need to spend that on him, but definitely somebody that I feel comfortable with as my RB2. All right, now let's talk about the other side of the coin. That's the busts. Chris, who do you think is going to let us down this year?
Yeah, I was actually kind of high on this guy early in the offseason, and then I looked at it more, and I'm completely off him now. And that's another running back. It's J.K. Dobbins. I don't understand the J.K. Dobbins love. This guy had 18 receptions in 15 games last year. So you're getting nothing in the receiving game from him. And, there's people out there saying, oh, they drafted Rashad Bateman. They drafted Tylan Wallace. They signed Sammy Watkins. They're going to throw the ball more. Well, if they throw the ball more, that's also bad for J.K. Dobbins because that means less carries. And this is a guy who wasn't even getting a lot of carries last year anyways. If you look at, he only had, I think, 3 games with more than 15 carries. And if you look at the last 5 games of the season, when Mark Ingram was no longer getting playing time, it was just him and Gus Edwards. He only got more than 13 carries one time in that stretch. And if it wasn't for touchdowns, his fantasy points over those last 5 games were I think he had one game where he had 18 points. The rest were 13 or less. Then he had that ridiculous week 17 game where he had 13 carries for like 160 yards because they were playing the Bengals, who were in full give up, don't care mode. But that's just not going to cut it. And not only that, this guy scored a touchdown in every game those last 5 games, and he was still only giving you 11, 13 fantasy points. What are you going to get from this guy when he doesn't score touchdowns? And guess what? He's not scoring a touchdown in every game next year, no matter how much you want to believe it, especially if Baltimore does throw the ball more. So I just do not see how J.K. Dobbins in any way is worth a 3rd round ADP. I don't even see him finishing as an RB2 next year. I think he will be a total bust.
Wow. I mean, I don't know if I go that far to say a bust for Dobbins, just because I think his touchdown totals will propel him at least a little bit. And he does have a floor because he's going to get enough carries. But yeah, he's in that weird zone of being drafted. He's not quite a solid every week RB2 just because, you know, he'll get scripted out sometimes and Lamar Jackson will steal some carries from him. But, you know, you can't quite just keep him as a flex or a bench player either. So he's just kind of, you don't want a player on your team in your lineup. All right, so for my bust is a name that I think a lot of people are going to overdraft based on past stats. Kenny Golladay. Now with the Giants, that's not a good thing. If you weren't quite sure, going from Matt Stafford to Daniel Jones, it's not going to help. The Giants were bottom 10 in pass attempts last season. Okay, that was with a team that didn't really have a running game, so you'd think they would be forced to pass a lot. They still kept it pretty conservative. Now Saquon Barkley is coming back. And oh yeah, by the way, they drafted a receiver in the 1st round also. Still have Sterling Shepard, still have Darius Slayton, still have Evan Engram. There's only so many targets to go around on a team that isn't pass heavy in the first place. So is there any possible way we can expect Golladay to do what he did in Detroit? Absolutely not. Detroit also, by the way, the last couple of years has been horrendous on defense and have had to pass the ball a lot and had a gunslinger who could do it. This is a total opposite situation. I like the player. I just hate the situation. All right, and now it's time for the breakouts. Who you have busting through this season?
I'm going to go with a tight end breakout. There's one every year, and I think this year it's Noah Fant. I mean, look at what he's done the first 2 years. You know, year one, he had 40 catches for 562 yards. Last year, up to 63 catches, over 600 yards. Yeah, the touchdowns haven't really been there for him, but the guy had 93 targets last year. That's incredible for a tight end. I think he goes over 100 targets. I think he goes over 800 yards. I think he busts into that upper echelon of tight ends. I think next year he is the consensus number 4 tight end, kind of like what we saw with TJ Hawkinson last year. I think we see that this year with Noah Fant.
You know, I love me some Noah Fant. Definitely agree. If the quarterback is anybody other than Drew Lock, he'll be fine. Now, as far as my breakout, this might seem like a little bit of a homer pick because it is, but still. Tua Tagovailoa, this is somebody who was set up for success. Year one was a learning year, right? He was still not 100% recovered from the hip injury. Right? Had to get comfortable, thrown in the fire mid-season. This was a situation he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. Manage the game, don't make mistakes, and he didn't. He didn't throw for a rookie quarterback, didn't throw that many interceptions or make too many mistakes. And they had a good defense. He just had to manage the game, and he did that. All right, he had a pretty good record. And now they're going to let the reins off of him, cut him loose. They added, of course, Jalen Waddle in the draft, Will Fuller through free agency. This is a team that is now ready to take the next step. They're going to see what he can do. He's going to be more comfortable calling the shots. And don't forget, new offensive coordinator, co-coordinators actually, instead of Chan Gailey. This is going to be a duo, George Godsey and Eric Studesville. They're going to game plan around Tua's strengths. So every year we see a guy kind of like in that mid-range of the draft, a quarterback that breaks through and takes the next step. I think it's pretty obvious this year it's got to be Tua. All right, guys, that does it for our booms, busts, and breakouts. Check back in again later. We're going to do this all off season long to set you up for success in your fantasy drafts this season. Thanks for watching.